The most famous mustache in all the land comes in. SEC Mike Bratton, one of my dear old friends. I don't know why I said dear old friends. We hated each other for a long time, but he's here to talk about South Carolina football. We're very excited to have him. He's got some hot takes for the season. We talk about it right after this. Locked on Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked on Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked on Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. We have a special guest joining us. Before we get to that, I want to say thank you to making Locked on Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Remember, download the Game Time app today, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all capital letters, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. I'm dreading this part of the show, but we're going to start talking to Mike Bratton. I feel like you're going to say something that's only going to hurt my feelings the way you watch me do that ad read. Mike, welcome in, dude.
I never hated you. I don't know. You're jealous of my success does not mean that that I hated you.
Mike and I used to work together at Saturday Down South, and oh man, I never met you in real life, so I never knew that you were kidding. Everything we ever talked about was via text. And I was like, this guy's a jerk. And it turns out, no, you're just hilarious. And I had no idea. Regardless of that, I love you now, and I'm happy for you to be on the show. And I'm really happy because we're going to talk about some South Carolina football. First and foremost, how's the summer been?
Oh yeah, I mean it's been great. Anybody that missed it, I'm on the new Netflix documentary, so that's was kind of the highlight of my summer right there, getting to participate in that. Still have no clue why they asked me to do it. They asked a lot of professionals, and I mean I thought it was a tremendous show, but it had nothing to do with me. So that was pretty cool. But summer's over for me. It's been over since SEC media days. I'm ready for some college football.
Yeah, man, we're like, I think 18 days away from the first weekend, first Saturday, 19 from South Carolina. And obviously with the show, I want to start there. I mean, like we talked a little bit at media days, agreed on something, disagreed on some other stuff, and just talk about where this South Carolina team ranks. It's odd to see South Carolina go into a season with this much notoriety. And there's still a ton of, I feel like, not hate, but disrespect that they're still getting. And that part I feel like is like what we're used to. For real. Like don't laugh at that. You know I'm right.
I'm just thinking of your timeline, the battles you're getting in with other media people who are like dare question South Carolina, who I believe is top 15 in the polls.
Who, Simonton?
I mean, South Carolina being in top 15, that's a perfect spot. I don't think you want them top 10 right now. I really don't. I think you'd rather there still be doubt, because it seems like South Carolina, they get fueled by that all the haters out there.
I wish they were lower. I'm just saying, I think that sometimes we talk about this program in a different light than other programs, despite there being very similar talking points for both. And I'm talking about Oklahoma. We're not going to get into it.
I thought you were talking about Missouri, who is that's the program South Carolina aspires to be, according to some of the Twitter mentioned battles, whatever you want to call it, that I've been engaged in.
Listen. It's hard to like not get triggered by that comment as a South Carolina person. Like, for real, it's not. Or I mean, it's hard to. But then you look at the numbers, and if you're being objective, it's like last year's the first time you beat them in 5 years. So
right,
I don't disagree with that. Going into this season, I'm with you. I think that being in the top 15 is right where they should be. It's the first time they've been ranked preseason in the last, or I think since 2014, which obviously didn't end well for South Carolina. But going into this year, just what's your overall take of this team and confidence level going into the season?
Well, if I may, because again, I like to stir things up. I don't know if you've got that yet, but let's swing it back to Missouri, because I think that is a game that very few people outside of the South Carolina, Missouri fan bases are probably, talking about this off season. But I think that's going to be absolutely huge. And I think the winner of South Carolina at Missouri is, again, it's not going to eliminate you from anything, but the winner, I think, is legitimately going to be in the playoff conversation deep into the season, whereas the loser, man, South Carolina's got a lot tougher games than Missouri. Missouri's got I don't know, tougher games. Yeah, I would say tougher games perhaps than South Carolina. So again, the loser, it doesn't eliminate you, but I think by the end of the season, it could eliminate you from the playoff, if that makes sense. South Carolina's got to take care of business, obviously, a little bit earlier. And that is kind of my biggest question, I guess you'd say, about Shane Beamer's South Carolina program is just they seem to start a little bit slower than you'd want them to. It's paramount that they get off to a fast start this year because the tail end of the season is much tougher than the start. So I think we've got to start 5-0, and if we do, we can make the college football playoff for the Gamecocks.
What you're saying, I feel like, is kind of scoffed at from certain people and said like, oh yeah, like whoever wins that's going to end up being in the playoff conversation. But like you look a year ago and you look at what the qualifications were to be in the playoff, and there's no doubt in my mind that if Missouri ended with an SEC schedule finished 10-2, they would have absolutely been in the college football playoff. Now, and the other part of that too is like you could make the case like, well, they got boat raced by Bama, they got boat raced by A&M. Those are two top 10 opponents. Or actually, I think A&M might have been unranked at the time, or they were ranked lower at least, because I think Mizzou was number 9 overall. But you lost both those games on the road. We saw with Indiana that did not matter in terms of being able to get into the playoff. So I think you're right. A road win at South Carolina that late in the season would have been what pushed them over the top. I think it's weird too, because I've looked at this from both sides and been on radio about it and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't on a Netflix doc, but I mean, I was on radio and stuff.
Maybe
like
one day.
What's that?
Maybe one day you will be.
Hopefully, yeah. I'll never be as cool as you, Mike. We know that. But no, I think when you talk about it, like I've explained like over and over again, it's like, okay, well, listen, South Carolina can go in, and I think they can easily get to 5-0 to start the year, or be whatever undefeated before they go to LSU. Mizzou is starting a schedule where they don't leave home until nearly Halloween. And when you talk about like Kansas, that'll be interesting because that's a very, very bitter rivalry that people don't really understand in the Southeast. But it's very much so a very bitter rivalry. And then you get South Carolina at home. So it's kind of like we've looked at both these teams. It's like, oh, yeah. It's almost like a foregone conclusion. They're going to both get off to really, really good, easy starts because the front half of the schedule is easier than the last half. But they do face each other. And I think as many things that can be erased later in the season that happen in September, I don't know if this is one of those games.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a war. And again, Drake is a very good coach. Shane Beamer is a very good coach. I think they are, quite honestly, probably the two most underrated coaches in this conference right now. You give a major edge to South Carolina, though, due to the quarterback position, at least. But again, I mean, I don't know. Name to know. Again, I'm not here to pump up Missouri, but Ahmad Hardy, their transfer running back, apparently he is the real deal. I predicted he's going to lead the SEC in rushing this season. So if South Carolina can corral Hardy, they're going to win that game, I think.
So that's one thing that people refuse to talk about with Mizzou, and we don't need to turn this into a Mizzou podcast, but it is one of those things where it's like when you start looking at the players to know and the things to be aware of, like, yeah, Luther Burden's gone. Theo Weiss is gone. Luther Burden's the one that caught that game-winning touchdown pass, they thought, with 1 minute and 9 seconds to go in Columbia last year. But, bringing in Kevin Coleman, the returning leader in receptions and receiving yards at receiver for them, they went out and paid about $1.5 million for a quarterback from Penn State that, by all means, has the physical tools to replace Brady Cook. And listen, as great as Brady Cook was, from a production standpoint, 12 touchdowns. That's all. Like, it wasn't like a crazy, crazy year for them. But I'm with you on Ahmad Hardy, man. I think that kid coming in, I think he had 1,400 yards at Louisiana Monroe. And you look at Mizzou's track record, they've been able to have a top 4 running back in terms of rushing yards in the SEC in like 4 of Drink's 5 years. And they led the SEC, I believe, 2 of those with Beatty and
Roundtree.
No. It was it Roundtree?
And Cody Schrader. I mean, every year the Missouri's got a really good running back under Drink. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to a quick break. You're not going anywhere. You have nowhere to go. And we're going to be right back. Before we do, or when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about LaNorris Sellers and on this side of the ball. Way less Missouri talk, I promise. We got a little bit carried away there, but I am interested to see what your takes are on LaNorris Sellers, and also the fact that something we're not talking a lot about South Carolina is they really might have the best player on both sides of the ball. I know going into the year saying Ohio State with Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, I'm certainly okay with that argument. But there's also a case to be made that at least in the SEC, having LaNorris Sellers on one side and Dylan Stewart on the other, you might have the best combo there in the conference. We will talk with Mike about that when we come back. Before we go, this didn't work the way I thought it would. Mike, don't go anywhere. Before we go to break, I do want to give a quick shout out, like I said earlier, to our friends at Game Time. You guys have heard me talk about Game Time before. You're going to hear me talk about them again, because here's the deal. We're getting closer to football season, and we've all been there before. Logging on early, waiting forever to get concert tickets. They finally go on sale, and you get put into a queue, however you even spell that, I don't know, and figure out how to get tickets just to have your name not called, your number not called. And instead of making memories, you're out here dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. I tell you what, if you're worried about what happens if plans change, the Game Time guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. And my favorite thing, personally, about guarantee or about the Game Time guarantee is that you can see a view from your seats, a panoramic view, before you ever even step foot in the stadium. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We'll be right back after this with more Locked On Gamecocks. All right, let's welcome Mike back in.
I just used Game Time to buy some South Carolina playoff tickets. Let's go.
That's right. We'll get to the playoff talk in a minute, because I do want to get your opinion on that and tell me what you think. But just go ahead and just figuring out where this team stands in the SEC. I know you do your power rankings. I think it's every Sunday or every Saturday night. Where do you have South Carolina right now, and why?
I think, man, you put me on the spot here. Let me look it up. Now, I haven't put this out in a good while. This is before media days. I got them 9th in the SEC, but I'd probably bump them up a lot higher post SEC media days. I'd bump them up above Ole Miss, who I had 8, and Florida, because DJ Lagway seemingly can't stay healthy, who I have 7. So I would probably bump up South Carolina to at least 7. And maybe even, I got Oklahoma 6, but John Mateer may have gambled away this football season. And if he has, then put in South Carolina right there, probably at number 6.
I love the fact that Mateer in the gambling situation, like I've done that on Venmo. I'm sure I've said some stuff that's like, this is for blah, blah, blah. And you're like, it's between you and your friends, an inside joke. And like, I don't think he should be suspended, whatever. I will also tell you that him publicly saying that a day before day after the game was actually played, not a great look.
Right. Yeah. And I can confirm Chris has said some wild stuff, because I have the receipts. I have saved this information if I ever need to use it. When you're on Netflix, that's coming out. Just let you know.
That'll ruin me if I don't already do it myself beforehand. So like, I think one of the reasons it makes sense to have South Carolina that high, and I'm right there with you. Like I had Beamer as, I think, the 8th best coach in the conference, which I think is fair because of the talent that is already in this conference from the coaching standpoint. I'm pretty cut and dry with the fact that I think he's in the top half there, though, but right around 8. I had South Carolina at 6 as well. LaNorris Sellers, it cracks me up, the idea that people think he can't throw the football. Where are you with LaNorris Sellers and how good? Because here's the thing I keep going back to too, Mike, is I've seen Ari Wasserman say this on 3 and a couple other guys. I don't think Sellers has to be Superman to take them to the next level and get to the playoff, because I think he had to be last year, and you saw him do that. But I don't think he has to be that this year because of how much talent they still have around him. And is also going into year 2.
Right, and hopefully he won't have to dodge 9 sacks a game like he did last year. I mean, the offensive line, well, and I know they were young, I know they got some talent, but he was getting hit quite a lot. And I don't think the vast majority, if any other quarterback in this conference, say for maybe Jalen Milroe, could have maybe avoided some of the hits that he took. And of course, Jalen Milroe if he wasn't getting hit, he was throwing the ball to the other team. So that's not an issue LaNorris Sellers has. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're 100% right. He doesn't necessarily have to be Superman. But my biggest question, and I know this is not really quite what you asked, but just
good. I'm glad you could say it then.
How dominant South Carolina's defense was at the tail end of the season. What is that unit going to look like?
Right.
Losing so many pieces in the front seven? Dylan Stewart, I think he's the best defensive player in the SEC, maybe the best player. And if he's not, it's because LaNorris Sellers is the best player. So they have one heck of a combo, 1-2 there. But again, I would even wager to say, Chris, and you tell me if I'm wrong, because I was talking about this on my show last night, Dylan Stewart's numbers, they're probably not going to be as good as they were his freshman year. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to be as good, and maybe even better. But I think every game South Carolina goes into this year, the focal point is going to be, where's Dylan Stewart? How do we contain him? And that's going to open up a lot of these other defensive players to make big-time plays for the Gamecocks. Again, that's my biggest question is the defense, and I got all the faith in Clayton White to get that unit. And again, that's another positive to the schedule being lighter. It's not really that light early, but it's lighter than it is the back half. You get those issues resolved. I think South Carolina is going to be really, really good once again, and going to be a playoff team or a playoff contender all season long.
Man, your background is so much cooler than mine.
It's that Netflix money.
That's fair. No, I don't disagree with you. I've brought this up before, and I think that's one of the cool things too about the position that he plays, where it's like you don't have to, like, sacks are great. I would love for him to get more sacks than he had a year ago. I think he finished with 8.5 or something like that. Like, I would love for that number to go up. Also, though, what I would love more than that is his productivity, where in terms of getting a pressure rate, havoc plays. Like he had so many of those plays where he forced fumbles and was in the backfield and constantly getting sacks and very, very disruptive. But it felt like it was more so in the first part of the season, especially very early on, that he was doing that. And then I don't think it's like, this isn't a negative about Dylan Stewart. It's just a plain and simple fact about the game of college football and game of football in general, where, listen, you don't have Kyle Kennard lining up on the other side of you this year. Like, you just don't have that luxury. And I think what it really ends up doing is, I don't know if Stewart's going to end up being a Lombardi Award winner or a Nagurski Award or whichever one. I always mix them up, that Kennard won last year. But I do think that, like, even if he doesn't have double-digit sacks, the focus on him is going to open up for whoever, the name that we don't know, is going to be on the other side of that. And I think that to piggyback off that, Mike, that's the thing I keep going back to. And this is something I remember, I say this a lot on this show, especially with Chris Doring said this to me 5 years ago or something like that about Florida, when I was like, oh, this guy's going to be not very good and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, but here's the thing. You didn't know the names prior to last season that they're replacing. It's not like everybody was like, it's not like a bunch of people around the country were like, oh, Tonka Hemingway, dude, just check it. Tonka Hemingway and TJ Sanders, they're going to light this year up. And it's like, I don't know if you're going to have the same production and have 4 sacks or 8 combined between those, like whoever replaces those two in the middle. But I do know that, like, we weren't talking about those guys the same way we were talking about Mason Graham out of Michigan or other kids from around the country, even like Jaheim Otis at Bama last year. So I feel like going into this year, I'm going to put my money on Clayton White, because if the one thing that he's been able to do for 4 consecutive years, regardless of the names on the defense he's putting out there, it's go play really, really sound defense.
Right. And, Lane, I call him Whiffen because he whiffed with that mighty roster he had last season. Yeah. But Lane Whiffen gets credit as being the portal king. But I don't know that there's a coach in the Southeastern Conference that does a better job than Shane Beamer and his staff identifying talent and getting the most out of them. Like you said, Kyle Kennard, I mean, I didn't even know who that was going into last season. So, and it's not a one-off. They've done this year after year after year. They're doing it again, shoring up the holes in the roster via the portal. Yeah. And, again, you just kind of got to have faith in Shane Beamer and company to get that done, because they've done it time and time again.
I swear to God, guys, I did not pay Mike to say that. I did not pay him a cent to say that. But that's something I feel like I've been saying a bunch on this show, man. I'm with you. And I think that's one of the things that kind of frustrates me. And it's something I was arguing with somebody about the other day on Twitter, because it's like, I do think at some point you got to give Shane Beamer the benefit of the doubt. When we come back, We're going to talk about the last word that we just said there, and that's doubt. What like the biggest concerns you have going into this year, final record and predictions, stuff like that. And then I just want to hear one hot take, but we will do that with Mike Bratton as soon as we come back right after this. All right. What is that? What are you drinking there? Is that moonshine?
Oh, yeah.
If you would have told me that.
We're not allowed to curse, but sponsored by Tennessee Legends.
King Snake?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll give your snake some kingness.
I don't know what that means. Is that like a Haynes King reference? That kid's going to be good. Okay, so let's get into this part, the concerns, because there are concerns. We can't just be sunshine pumpers as much as I get labeled as being with this program. But your biggest concerns for South Carolina going into 2025? Don't say me.
I think replacing tight end Simon. I mean, I thought he was a guy that literally no one talks about other than Gamecock fans that don't realize how valuable he was to that football team last year. That's chief among them, aside from what I already hit on with the replacing a lot of players in the front seven.
That's fair. I think it's a really good point, man. I keep bringing this up. I mean, like he was your leading receiver last year, right? That's one thing. And so the target's going to go there, and you also know that even with a different offensive coordinator, Mike Shula is still going to target the tight end. We saw it for years in Carolina, and I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. Especially with some of the talent they have there at tight end. So I think you're right. Replacing Simon that's a big, because at the very least he was not just your leading receiver, but one of the reasons he had all those receptions, he was a pretty big safety net for LaNorris last year. Looking at the schedule, give me the one game that we're not talking enough about besides Missouri, maybe, or maybe your boldest take that you think that people are kind of underrating South Carolina that you think they can win.
Biggest game they could win? I'd love to see them smack LSU for last year. How about that?
Yeah.
I think LSU is highly overrated. I know they spent. Well, I don't know if your other employer would appreciate that comment, but I think they are highly overrated. I think Brian Kelly is a very, very good coach. Is he an elite coach? I seriously doubt that. So I think that game is certainly winnable. Alabama. I mean, you're getting it at home. That's a good thing. I think Alabama's going to win the SEC though. So
they're a homecoming, dude. That's a homecoming game.
All right, easy win. What was I thinking? South Carolina's going to whoop Alabama. I don't know whether you'll be happy or sad at that.
I will be happy every game South Carolina wins. I'll tell you this. I do think it's interesting because when you talk about the LSU game, from a matchup standpoint, because that's we talk about the cliches all the time, like games are won and lost in the trenches. I've watched it up close. LSU's defensive line is much better than it was last year. They're very disruptive. That Bernard Gooden kid from South Florida has been a monster for most of fall camp. But I'll also tell you, man, that offensive line that they have, they're going to start 5 new players across the board. Like Kelly said the other day that Braylon Moore, the kid from Virginia Tech that transferred in, he's the only player that is entrenched in a starting position at center. So I think that part is very interesting. But you talk from a matchup standpoint, man, South Carolina's defensive line going up against them, that feels like a winnable matchup for South Carolina.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, they're touting up Blake Baker and his defense. Yeah, they look good at times, but what did they struggle with mightily? A mobile quarterback,
right?
Now, has that been resolved? Whit Weeks is awesome. Harold Perkins every year I hear is awesome. I don't know that you can play with those guys at the same time on the football field. They haven't been able to figure that out. That may be LSU's 2 best defensive players there. So, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of issues there, I think, with LSU. And again, they're really hoping on this transfer class to come in and provide Garrett Nussmeier with all these weapons. But rarely does a team insert all these receivers and it works immediately. It usually takes 2 years for receivers. Now, there are certainly outliers, but I seriously question as well. I don't know about you, Chris, but the offensive coaching staff right now in Baton Rouge with Joe Sloan, I believe Brian Kelly, I don't know if he took play calling duties, but he took the play sheet. I've never seen him do that in his LSU tenure until last year. I could be mistaken, but I don't recall that. And LSU had a lot of NFL talent on the offensive side of the football, and I didn't see a ton of that production last year in college, at least.
I'm not going to slander Joe Sloan because he was very nice to us in practice the other day, but I will also silently respond this way and nod my head adamantly. I think it's interesting, and I tell you what, the biggest perceivable strength that they have is the receivers, and like I tell you what, watching them in practice, it feels like they could throw out 3 of those guys anywhere in there and they'd have success. Well, I'll tell you what, the best unit on this team, hands down, and this is saying something because that defensive, that receiving group is going to be very, very special that South Carolina has, if it isn't already. I think it is already, but the secondary is going to be the strength of the team. Like, that is the best unit on the field. So I love that matchup. If they can figure out a way to go on the road and beat LSU, I am all for that, calling that shot. I will also say this, that the other part of it is continuing trends and turning the narrative, changing the narrative. Like, Shane Beamer was 2-10 in road games in the SEC prior to last year. He went 3-1 last season on the road in the SEC. His only loss, of course, coming by 2 points at Alabama. So I love that call. I really do. Give me your boldest prediction. I don't want to hear your schedule or your like, you know what? Give me your win total, or season prediction. I don't know what I'm trying to say, Mike. You know what I'm trying to say. What's the record at the end of the year, Michael? And then also your hottest take about South Carolina.
Well, I just looked it up while you were talking there. I wasn't paying attention to anything you just said.
Why would you?
But South Carolina has beaten Vanderbilt 16 years in a row. I'm sure your audience will aware Diego Pavia. He's made it publicly known there's a game on the calendar that he's got circled, and it's some South Carolina Gamecocks. So despite beating Vanderbilt 16 years in a row, I'm predicting an upset here, Marler. Vanderbilt beats South Carolina at the coin toss, and South Carolina beats them by 45 points. So the upset's going to be Diego Pavia upset. Give me Gamecocks going 9-3 this year.
I love it. I was worried where you're going with that because I had to do a show a couple weeks ago with my buddy Corey Burton. Great dude, host Locked on Vanderbilt. But I had no voice. Remember, I don't know if you know this. I know you've wished this to happen for years now, but I finally lost my voice when I was trying. I was like, hey, so Corey's having to kind of carry this whole show. And I'm like, dude, thank you so much. It's so nice. I really appreciate it. It sounded like the Godfather trying to talk. And then at the very end, he's like, I got Vanderbilt beating South Carolina 28-10. And I was like, what the is that? So anyway, Mike, I appreciate everything that you do in general. And I'm just so happy for your success. I say it to you all the time, but it's so awesome to watch. Tell everyone and all of our listeners where they can find you and where you'll be this upcoming season.
Yeah, for sure. The show's called That SEC Podcast, highest rated SEC show on Apple, Spotify. We're blowing up on YouTube as well. So we go live every night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central. This year, we're going to roll out 3 live shows a day during football season. So you can't really miss us. And then just search SEC Mike. And unfortunately, you'll see a lot of this face.
I appreciate you, brother.
All right, man. Thank you so much.